Hey everyone, Kevin here. Have you ever played the game Jenga? You know, the one with the wooden blocks that you pull one out, put it on top, and hope the whole thing just doesn't fall over? Well, I realized the other day that the public school system is essentially one big Jenga game now, and one that they're losing too. Now, what do I mean by all of that? Well, basically, instead of trying something legitimately new, schools just do the same thing over and over again. They take one wooden block from the bottom, place it on top, and proudly declare that this new idea will be the solution to all of public education. And we see this all the time where administrators and policymakers introduce new legislation or initiatives, wipe their hands, and say reform has been done. Except for the fact that their new thing is just something they did 20 years ago or in another state recently that was shown not to work in the first place. That isn't reform. Oh, yeah, and then somehow they're still surprised that it fails to work, huh? It's always that way that happens. It reminds me of the quote attributed to Albert Einstein of the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. When you look at it this way, that quote stands as a testament and indictment of the decades worth of school reform efforts that have never shown any real success. Just think about all the various things being promoted right now that have been tried before. I mean, higher levels of accountability for teachers with authoritarian evaluation systems to back it up, standardized testing to gather new data that never gets properly used, school vouchers to promote school choice without any real guidance on how to do so effectively, latch discipline policies to be more inclusive. Oh, yeah, and reducing credentialing requirements to raise recruitment, something I just did a video on recently. I mean, you name it, all of it's been done before at some point, and they've all failed. Back in 2010, this was even brought up by, and Diane Ravitch termed this educational preoccupation of just recycling old ideas faddism, a term that I think describes this pretty well. Ask any teacher, too. They will verify that this is what goes on in education all the time. Some new curriculum is introduced that year, and you recognize it for what it is, just a cannibalized and repackaged version of the same curriculum you taught 3 years ago. This contributes to what I have always said in the past about how education always operates behind the times. American education functions as if it was still the 20th century and there were more teachers coming out of college preparatory programs than they could ever possibly hire. And this isn't just an American problem. I've had teachers in Europe, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia all reach out to me trying to find ways to get out of the profession. It's a worldwide issue. But my point, though, is to think of this in a business sense. If a company cannot keep up with changing tastes or reinvent themselves during the tough times, they go out of business. Just recently, I mean, we've had Sears, Bed Bath & Beyond, Radio Shack, and Toys R Us, who are examples of this exact thing happening. They eventually lost out to newer competitors who brought something fresh to the table that consumers wanted. Education is suffering the same problem, and instead of realizing that they need to entirely reinvent themselves for the 21st century in order to meet modern needs, they don't. They end up just suffering losses in consumers, i.e., the students and their parents. This is why homeschooling, charter schools, and private schools have grown in popularity so much recently, and also why teachers have left in search of other careers, too. I know people have a difficult time accepting the idea that education should be run like a business, but there does need to be at least some kind of business mentality in education for it to be successful. They've lost their employees due to genuine retention problems and their customers as a result of no longer appealing to what they need. Companies fail when that happens, and it is happening in education now. Teachers need to feel empowered to run their classrooms, in other words, autonomy, trust that they can do their jobs well, see repercussions for student misbehaviors, and have the feeling that they are treated as the professionals they are with a commensurate salary that permits them a certain standard of living. Students need to learn practical, functional skills that they can use in any career, not just this push to make them go to college when it isn't the gateway to success anymore. Our expectations of what schooling means have changed, and the system hasn't changed with them. Even when we went into distance learning and really embraced technology in the classroom, I mean, more out of necessity than anything, though, it was done in a way that ultimately led to even more learning loss in the long run. Plus, now we are embracing the new AI programs in education, but again, are not creating methods by which to actually manage their use correctly. We just continue to rely on old ideas to moderate what new ones we actually use. And it doesn't work. School reformers get swept up in fads and repackaging old things rather than actually analyzing what problems need solving and how to go about solving them. Oh, yeah. And they never ask the teachers their opinion. Oh, the ones who understand what we need? I mean, even Common Core has elements of older things that were already tried. And again, what new stuff is in there doesn't often work because it ends up confusing kids. We have all heard the horror stories about Common Core math, to name an example. Another example, though, would be the initiatives to now tie teacher pay to performance, something that has been tried before and failed. They don't make sense because teachers have no autonomy to run their classes in a way that might produce better results in the first place. So tying pay is useless. What you see here is Jenga. They just take something old, put it on top, and breathe a sigh of relief when it doesn't all come tumbling down under its own weight. But what policymakers need to realize is that education is not too big to fail. It absolutely can and is failing. Teachers, students, and parents are tired of the games and failure to meet their individual needs. It is why so many of us have left. And until the entire tower falls over, I don't think we will see any actual or meaningful reforms, much less one that is headed by teachers as it should be. Education is stuck in the past, and we have finally refused to be ourselves. Just like when Sears failed to innovate and went out of business, so too will the public school system, at least one day. Until that day comes, though, you will just continue to see it wither as teachers retire, resign, and aren't replaced by new educators because there aren't any coming through the system now. Education is an upside down Eiffel Tower, and it's going to fall over just like Jenga does. Because every Jenga game has an end, guys. And as always, I'm here to help you break free of that game too. See you next time.